Ashbury Road had always been a quiet and peaceful place to live. It was lined with tall, leafy trees that rustled gently in the breeze, and the houses were charming and welcoming. That was until the old Williams mansion was bought and renovated by the wealthy and eccentric Mr. Sinclair. No one knew much about Mr. Sinclair, except that he was reclusive and kept to himself. The mansion had been abandoned for years, and many believed it was cursed. Rumors began to circulate that strange things were happening inside the mansion, and soon, the entire neighborhood was buzzing with curiosity and fear. One night, a group of teenagers decided to sneak into the mansion and investigate the rumors for themselves. They crept through the dark, dusty halls, their flashlights illuminating the ancient paintings and dusty furniture. As they reached the third floor, they heard a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the halls. The teens panicked and ran, but something chased them down the stairs. They burst out of the mansion, gasping for breath, and swore never to go back. But that was only the beginning of the horror that plagued Ashbury Road. Soon after the incident, strange things started happening in the neighborhood. People reported hearing footsteps in their houses at night, objects moving on their own, and even whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Some claimed to have seen ghostly apparitions wandering the streets. As the weeks went by, the incidents became more and more frequent, and the fear among the residents grew. Many moved away, leaving their homes empty and abandoned. It wasn't long before the local authorities got involved. The police conducted an investigation, but they found nothing out of the ordinary. The mayor even hired a team of paranormal investigators, but they too came up empty-handed. Despite the lack of evidence, the strange occurrences continued, and the residents of Ashbury Road were forced to live in constant fear. That was until one day, Mr. Sinclair appeared at the door of the town hall, demanding to speak with the mayor. He claimed that he had been conducting experiments in his mansion, and that he had accidentally opened a portal to another dimension. The creatures that had come through the portal were now roaming the streets, causing chaos and terror. The mayor was skeptical at first, but Mr. Sinclair showed him the portal and the creatures that had come through. They were grotesque, misshapen creatures with multiple limbs and eyes, and their mere presence was enough to make the mayor's skin crawl. Mr. Sinclair explained that he had been trying to find a way to close the portal, but he needed the help of the town's residents. He convinced the mayor to organize a team of volunteers to help him with the experiment, promising to reward them handsomely for their bravery. The mayor agreed, and soon, a team of volunteers was assembled. They were equipped with weapons and sent into the streets to hunt down the creatures and bring them back to Mr. Sinclair's mansion. It was a dangerous mission, and many didn't make it back alive. But those who did were rewarded with riches beyond their wildest dreams. As the weeks went by, the team managed to capture most of the creatures and bring them back to the mansion. Mr. Sinclair worked tirelessly to close the portal, and finally, after months of hard work, he succeeded. The strange occurrences in Ashbury Road stopped, and the neighborhood returned to its peaceful state. The residents who had moved away began to return, and the town started to thrive once again. But the volunteers who had helped Mr. Sinclair with his experiment soon discovered the truth behind his motives. Mr. Sinclair was not a kind-hearted benefactor, but a mad scientist who had intentionally opened the portal to unleash the creatures upon the town. He had only closed it because he had achieved his goal of studying the creatures and had no further use for them. The volunteers were horrified at the revelation, and some tried to confront Mr. Sinclair. But he was always one step ahead of them, and they could never catch him. One by one, the volunteers began to disappear, their bodies found mutilated and dismembered in the most gruesome ways. The police were baffled by the murders, unable to find any evidence that could lead them to the culprit. As the months went by, the killings continued, and the residents of Ashbury Road were once again living in fear. They knew that something was not right, but they could not put their finger on what it was. Rumors began to circulate that Mr. Sinclair had somehow managed to imbue the creatures with his own twisted intelligence, turning them into his personal minions. They speculated that he was using them to carry out his gruesome deeds, eliminating anyone who threatened to expose him or get in his way. One day, a local reporter managed to sneak into Mr. Sinclair's mansion, hoping to uncover the truth about the disappearances. What he found was beyond anything he could have imagined. The mansion had been transformed into a laboratory, filled with bizarre machinery and strange, otherworldly artifacts. In the center of the room was a massive tank filled with a glowing, pulsing substance that seemed to be alive. As the reporter tried to make his way through the lab, he heard a sinister voice behind him. "Welcome, my dear friend," said Mr. Sinclair, stepping out of the shadows. The reporter tried to run, but he was quickly surrounded by Mr. Sinclair's creatures. They dragged him kicking and screaming to the tank, where Mr. Sinclair explained his plans. He had been studying the creatures and the otherworldly substance that they were made of. He had discovered that the substance had incredible regenerative properties, and he was using it to create an army of invincible super soldiers. The reporter was horrified by what he heard. He knew that if Mr. Sinclair's plan succeeded, it would mean the end of humanity as they knew it. But he was helpless to stop it. Mr. Sinclair's creatures dragged him to a nearby operating table, where he was strapped down and injected with the otherworldly substance. He could feel it coursing through his veins, transforming him into something he didn't recognize. As the transformation completed, the reporter was consumed by a hunger he could not control. He lunged at Mr. Sinclair, tearing him limb from limb with his newfound strength. But it was too late. The otherworldly substance had consumed him, turning him into a mindless killing machine. He wandered the streets, seeking out new victims to feed his insatiable hunger. And so, the horror of Ashbury Road continued, fueled by the mad experiments of Mr. Sinclair. The residents lived in fear, never knowing when they would become the next victim of the creatures or the super soldiers that roamed their streets. It was a place where nightmares came to life, a place where the line between reality and madness was blurred. And it all started with the renovation of an old mansion by a wealthy and reclusive eccentric.